This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we have as our guest tonight one of my favorite legislators, a young man from Auburn, Alabama, Joe Lovvorn, who is loved over there in Lee County like I've never seen. I got a chance to go over to Lee County recently for the swearing in of my longtime friend's son, Jerry Colley Jr. was sworn in as probate judge, and Joe Lovvorn treated me like royalty, let me get visit with him and everything. He's so kind to come, but he's right in the middle of session, y'all. He's got to get back soon. He chairs of the very, very powerful Rules Committee. Joe, good to have you on the show.
Glad to be here, Mr. Steve. Thanks for having me.
Joe Lovvorn is a native of Lee County. You were born and raised over there, wasn't you?
Well, actually, I'm still trying to earn my keep there. I moved there for college, so I've been there since '94. I grew up in Randolph County.
Right next door.
I did, and so I moved there for college and started working and finished school and didn't want to leave, so I went back to school, finished school again, and now they can't drag me out of there.
But were you in the fire department, wasn't you?
Yes, sir. I started working at the fire service at Auburn Fire Department to help pay my way through college. And they have a great program there that helps welcome in students, and they'll pay your tuition, and you get fully certified as a firefighter. And then I turned career and then went back to grad school. And every time I got ready to leave, I'd get promoted. Very fortunate, and just enjoyed what I was doing. So I stayed and made it a career, and just retired a couple years ago.
Well, let me ask you this. You don't mind me asking, I hope. You're not about 50 years old, are you?
I'm 48.
You're only 48 years old?
Yes, sir.
See, that's young. I bet you grew up, did you grow up in Roanoke or outside?
Well, my dad's a farmer. I was out in the country in the north part of a little town called Graham, Alabama.
Oh, yeah. But did you read one of the local papers there, the Randolph Leader or anything?
Oh, we had the Randolph Leader. We'd certainly read your articles.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I've been writing my column so long, and that Randolph Leader has run it consistently for 21 years. So you grew up reading my column, didn't you?
I did.
You fit in the category of every legislator over there, especially in the Senate and on the Supreme Court. I'll see Greg Reed or Will Ainsworth or Garland Gudger or anybody. I bet you half the Senate, when I walk up there, they say, Steve, please don't write anything about it. My mom reads your column. So everybody's mama reads my column.
My mom definitely reads it.
So. Does she? I wrote a good column about old Garland Gudger last 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned his mama, Miss Dot, and he says she's so proud of that. We're gonna frame it and we're gonna put it in her. She wants to see it, everything. Joe, I tell you what I appreciate about you, and I want you to tell people about your house seat. You know, you weren't in the house seat. Maybe you had just got elected, but you're in the house seat of my old seatmate, Mr. Pete Turnham, who, by the way, he was from Chambers. He was born in Chambers County, but you were born in Randolph. Mr. Pete was my longtime friend, and you were so good to come to his funeral.
Well,
you were at Mr. Pete's funeral.
Well, I had to pay my respects to him and his family. We're not important, but I feel like the seats we sit in are. And there's only 3 people have sat in the seat I serve in.
I want our viewers to hear that.
Since 1958.
Since 58. Tell the story of that. Now tell how long it's been.
Mr. Pete was there from 1958 to 1998, and then Mike
40 years.
Right, and Mike Hubbard was there from 98 to 16, and then I was elected in the special in 16, and been serving ever since. So I take it serious, and it's important how we represent Lee County, and it's an honor to serve behind them, and it's a lot of good things going on in Lee County, and my job most days I tell people is to not mess it up. So
you're beginning your third 4-year term.
That's right.
In the House. Well, you've risen to pretty good leadership, given the fact that this is your third term, but this is all Nathaniel's third term too, isn't it?
It is.
You and Nathaniel Ledbetter came together, who was Speaker, and I reckon Rules is probably, as far as effectiveness and power, it's probably number 2 in this. I'd say that Ways and Means might have a little more influence, but Rules would be in the top. You in the top 5 leadership in the House.
Well,
easily.
I don't argue with the money man. That's he certainly has some power with it. But I'm honored that Speaker Ledbetter has entrusted me with this chairmanship, and it's a great opportunity. I knew that it would be a lot of busy work, but I didn't realize the interaction I'd have with House members, advocates, and lobbyists, and Senate members, because everybody needs to get their bill moving through the process, and it's just a lot of fun. I enjoy people, and so it gives me an opportunity to meet with people from all over the state. And it's a lot of travel when we're out of session, out of the state and around our own state, just to learn more about issues and try to help people serve the people that they represent. And it's been a lot of fun, and certainly an honor to serve in this role.
Well, it's a very powerful position. Our viewers may not understand that when you say rules, they kind of confused. What does that mean? Well, you're the one who decides which bills get on the calendar.
Well,
it's just that simple.
There's several things under our umbrella that go through the rules, just like any organization has. There's certain procedures we follow, and so we help set those procedures and monitor those procedures. But the most time we spend, and the most important, is once a bill is filed, it has to go through the committee process, and that's where most of the work's done to get a bill massaged in the right position to move forward. And then once it's passed out of the committee it was assigned to, then it goes to the Rules Committee. And then our committee meets and takes bills and aligns them in a calendar that we feel like is ready to move forward for a vote of the entire House body. I tell people I work at the intersection of policy, procedure, and politics. And you can guess which one of those three I spend most of my time dealing with. Policy's pretty set, procedure is certainly written down, but the politics is the dynamics. And a lot of people have great ideas and great passions, and sometimes I just have to help redirect that passion. And I try to give people at least the second best answer, which is no. And I can tell them why there's a no, that we're not moving that legislation at this time, and give them things that we need to work on during the off season, but I certainly enjoy it. I enjoy the interjection. It's busy, but I like being busy.
Well, you're doing a great job. You're in the same position as my best buddy, longtime buddy, Jabbo Wagner, our colleague, your colleague or counterpart in the Senate. Jabbo, as you know, has been in the Senate starting his 52nd year, and he's chairman of the Rules Committee, and he lets people know how powerful he is. I sat there, I was with him the other night at a reception, and I said, Jabbo, all these girls are coming over wanting to kiss you and talk to you. He says, it's because they want their bills on the calendar. So Jabbo, he says, they want my bills, they want their bills on the calendar. So do you talk to Jabbo about different bills? Y'all kind of work together?
We interact a lot. It is a joy to work with Jabbo and try to set priorities. I certainly get with him and say, what's the priorities coming out of your chamber? And I share with him priorities. And we don't just deal with bills, we do a lot of resolutions that have to go through.
That's right.
And so we get a joint resolution that he's got a priority. I'll fast track it for him, and he certainly does the same for me. And when we got a budget issue, he and I'll talk and get with our budget chairman to make sure we get addressed things. So he is certainly a jewel, and as you're well aware, and it's an honor to serve beside him. And we've had a good time interacting over these last couple of years in our mutual capacity.
Jabbo is 40 years older than you. He's 88 and you're 48, but he loves you. We talked about it. We were riding down here one day, and I said, I like old Joe Lovvorn from Auburn. He said, he's one of the most enjoyable and pleasant guys I've worked with in the House, my counterpart. He paid you a real big compliment. He said, I said, I really like him. He's just as down to earth and just as solid as a rock. And Jabbo said, he sure is. But Jabbo's astute as he can be at 88. His hearing is not bad or anything.
To be in his fitness and mental capacity, and with the workload that he takes on, I'd sign that contract today if I could be in that health and that work capacity. But he has a passion for serving, and you can tell, and he enjoys it, and he is spry and energetic and just and funny and just a joy to be around. And I appreciate his compliments. That means a lot coming from him. But he is certainly, it goes both ways. He is great to serve along with as well.
Joe, I want to talk about some issues, but I get to thinking about what a good man you are and how well Lee County has been represented over the years, beginning with Mr. Pete in '58, and he served 40 years. He was the dean. Now Jabbo has surpassed him. Jabbo's now the dean of the legislature history, but when I was with Mr. Pete Turnham, he was the dean of the legislature, 40 years in the legislature. But then Mike Hubbard served. How many years did Mike Hubbard serve in your city?
He was there for what, 18 years, from
that long. He was there that
98
long.
to 16.
And he became speaker, and then you followed Mike Hubbard. Did you come in the regular term or in the middle of the term?
I came in special when that all the incidents happened with his service, and that was an interesting time to come in. I was new to politics, and
had you not been on the city council or anything like that?
No, I was just working. I had my head down working and raising a family. When this position was coming available, it was terrible timing, but I called someone. I said, "You need to run for it." They told me I need to run for it. I called the second person I thought needed to run it. They told me I needed to run for it again, and about that time my wife beeped in on the phone and said, "Apparently we're running for the legislature." And we thought about it, prayed about it, and you know, timing's not always right, but I can drive back and forth. My boys were seven.
Perfect. He did too.
My boys were 7 and 9 at the time.
45-minute drive.
If I couldn't have driven back and forth, I wouldn't have run at that time. And we prayed about it. We felt like we were doing what God wanted us to do at that time, and the community got behind us, and we haven't looked back.
Joe, I've always said that that's a great place to serve, and people don't realize how much Auburn has prospered and grown in the last 20 years. A good many of the professional people who work in Montgomery make that 45-minute commute down the I-85.
They do. I see the same cars every morning.
You see them, don't you?
And usually the same ones in the evenings. And it's not that far to drive.
They wave at you?
They do. They
do. Know you.
It's according to what bills we're debating. Sometimes they'll wave, sometimes they won't. But
he made that drive every day.
Well, it's to have that quality of life and to be back interacting in my district. It's just important, not just with my family, but
think
people
of what
I
a
serve.
luxury that is over somebody from Mobile or Huntsville.
It is. I certainly take concern for those people that make that sacrifice to serve. I had a cousin that looked at running for another seat in another part of the state, and where he was with his life and everything going on with his businesses and his kids, I told him he shouldn't do it yet because he would have to spend all his time down here.
And you don't get a lot of money for it either.
Well, if you're doing it for the money, then you're doing it. I tell people that's thinking about running, and ask yourself first, would I do it for free? And then work your way in from that.
Joe, to tell everybody how you come from such a prosperous, great place. Anybody who's ever moved to Auburn or gone to school there has fallen in love with the loveliest village on the plains. I've never seen anybody that wound up going to, well, just like you did, went to college there. Of course, you from East Alabama originally, but Auburn. Now, do you have part of Opelika too?
I used to. With redistricting, I'm now just in Auburn.
Who has Opelika?
So there's now 7 House members in Lee County. So we've got Jeremy Gray, Debbie Wood, and Bob Fincher had to come into Lee County and actually pick up. And so he goes all the way from Randolph County to Lee County. And then Chris Blackshear has it. But in Opelika, there's just
Smith Station's actually in. Is that in Lee or is that
it's in Lee County.
So he's from Smith Station, isn't he?
Right.
So you got 2 resident House members then, if you and Chris.
Correct.
Now, is Gray's from over in Opelika. He's from Opelika.
Gray's there.
Gray's a resident of Lee County.
Right.
So you got 3 resident legislators.
We do.
What's the population? At least about 100,000 people now, isn't it?
In Lee County, gosh, over 140 now.
Good gosh.
So it's
what size, what number? It's probably in the top 10 counties, isn't it?
It's getting up there, and you know, Auburn's pushing past 80,000 by itself. So it's, I tell you, we got a good problem, and that's growth. And it's when I say it's a problem, it is. We've got to handle that growth, and we've got growing pains that go along with it. But you know, Auburn's always considered the loveliest village, like you reminded us. But I tell people now, it's not just the loveliest village; it's the loveliest villages. There's little sections of town that everybody loves their little section of town.
Is that right?
And their little shopping center, their little grocery store, and the little schools. The way our schools are set up with the little nested elementary schools. It's just great problems to have.
How many elementary schools does Auburn have?
Gosh, we
probably
got
about 10, don't we?
We got tell you what, building another, and we're about to build a second high school. That's going to be tough.
You will have two high schools in Auburn.
We will.
What would be named?
They just released a name. It's going to be Plains High School. So,
is that right?
So they wanted something that tied back.
They can't be the Tigers, though, can they?
Well, we're going to have one Auburn High Tigers, and then I hope they can work together in a way. I was hoping both names would have Auburn in it just for that pride, but they did a study with a lot of involvement from the community, and they came up with Plains High School. So I'm excited about it. Mainly, it's going to be tough splitting the town up, but to have two ball teams that kids can play on, two bands, two cheerleading squads, two basketball teams, I think it's important. As many kids you can get involved in athletics and after-school programs, it's important. Two FFA programs. I think once we get through the growing pains of the split, we'll certainly see benefits from it.
I bet few people know that you're going to have two high schools. Will both of them have enough students to be in the top 6A or whatever it is?
At where we are now, they'll both be. We're 7A now.
7A.
The biggest 7A, and we'll be two 7As.
Two? You got that many? That's how much Auburn's grown.
That's
you gonna have? Well, that's almost big as Hoover then.
I tell you,
Hoover's got two big 7A schools, Hoover and Spain Park.
And then we've got very vibrant private schools that are growing.
Lee Scott's very prominent.
It is. We got more schools that are looking to open. They've looked at a Catholic high school. There's several options. It's just so many people are coming, and then relatives of those people are coming, and then the parents are moving, and it's just.
So the parents of those kids are moving there.
It's becoming. We've got several neighborhoods now that are 55 and older, set just for retirement families. So, and then we have a lot of second homes where people buy just a game day home, and it's just real estate there just keeps going up, and it's I'm just glad I got there when I did.
You sure are, because Auburn really is bustling. I did not know about two high schools though. That in itself tells you how much it's grown.
Well,
you got 80,000 people in Auburn.
It is.
Of course, they count the students though, when the population, when they count the population.
Well, some of those count as residents, some don't, and then it tweaks around. Several years ago, the Mayor Anders was saying that we had something like 4.5 people a day moving to Auburn, and I told him, I said, I don't have a problem with them 4, but those half people we're gonna have problems with. So we certainly just joke about. We have a lot of meetings about the growth and things that we're trying to get ahead of to try to make it where we can take us into the next decade. And
I'm not sure that Auburn and Opelika, they have a Big Ten mayors now. I know Auburn and Anders are in that top 10. Is Fuller and Opelika in there?
They're not. I tell all them Big Tens to watch out for number 11. I don't know who it is, but they're coming for all of them. So they're trying to grow their city to be in part of it.
Madison's grown so much up around Huntsville. It's in the top 10 cities in the state.
It is. It is.
But Auburn's kind of like that. But Auburn's growth really is more, is better than just what Madison's doing, because you're not putting such a strain. Like you said, there's probably a lot of retirees that are moving there to follow their children and grandchildren, and this happens in university towns around the country. They build communities to come back because people love their college experience so much. They come back and want to retire there because you have so many cultural things.
Sure.
With the sports and everything of a college town.
There's something to do every single day in our community. You can go to softball games, go to a play, go to soccer games, basketball, football. It's just always something. Baseball season's kicked off, so it's big. And we're so close to Atlanta, people are realizing you can be anywhere in the world. We just drive an hour and a half to Atlanta Airport. We're a little over 3 hours from the beach. Lake Martin's less than an hour away. It's just a great pocket, small town. It's certainly a little bigger than Mayberry is, but I tell you, with that college feel, it's just new. Yeah. It's new life coming in every fall with those students, and it just brings new energy in every year.
Do you know, I was talking to someone about this same thing we were talking about the growth and the prosperity of Auburn, and it being such a great place to raise your family because the schools are so good, which you would expect in a university city and community. And that school system has attracted like I said earlier, professional people from Montgomery that come to work here in Montgomery and the state agencies to be in that school system, in the Auburn school system, and it's not a bad commute, interstate, 40 minutes all the way. But I've had people tell me that you mentioned the Atlanta thing, I was talking to somebody from Auburn about, when they were talking about it, they said you'd be surprised how many Delta pilots live in Auburn for the school system and make that hour and a half commute to fly their airplanes in Atlanta. That's how close you are to Atlanta.
Oh,
it's an hour and a half, isn't it? Is that what it is?
It is.
To the airport.
We are full of pilots.
That's
and
what I
more
heard.
and more, and we're welcoming them. And a lot of them have been military service prior to that, so it's just good citizens in the community. And I see several of them at sporting events.
So there's a lot of that.
Oh, there's a lot of them, and it's and more coming. Less taxes in Alabama. Property taxes are lower. Plus, you just get that quality of life without the hustle and bustle. Hop on the interstate, whether you're in Auburn or Opelika, and go straight to work.
Let me tell you another group that has done this, and it probably is reflective in the math scores of Auburn. When you look at the scores of the cities in the state, it's always Mountain Brook, Homewood, Vestavia. Then Auburn sticks in there, and then Huntsville and the suburban cities of Huntsville make the top 10 schools. Auburn's always in the top 10, which I'm sure attracts professional people from Montgomery to Atlanta to settle there. But I was talking, we would have kept elaborating on the prosperity of Auburn, and people want to live there. Do you know that they told me that the Hyundai executives, when they first came here with this plant here in Montgomery, all the executives moved to Wind Lakes, a suburb of Montgomery. I'm told that all of them now live in Auburn, and that's less than a 40-minute commute, interstate all the way. Did you see that too?
Yes.
The Hyundai executives are over there too?
They are flocking there, and we've had more industries popping up, and some of the top executives for those industries are bringing their kids here for the school system in Auburn. And
that's what attracts people.
It's if you have a great school system and you have a good public safety system, most every other problem tends to take care of itself.
It does.
And Auburn, now the people, we pay a lot of local funds to make sure that the schools perform at that level, but we have received so much rewards back from that investment. It's Auburn's not a cheap town to live in. But
but the school you pay for, you get it.
Well, people are paying $30,000 and $40,000 per student for Montgomery private schools, where if they have 2 students and they can make that commute, spend a little more on a house maybe, if whatever neighborhoods they want to be in, but I think it's worth the investment.
Now, your children are out of school now?
They're both in high school. I got 10th and 12th graders, so it's...
Will they have to make a decision whether to go to Auburn or Plains?
Well, they're not. They'll both be out right before the transition.
Okay.
So they'll...
It's 2 years away before Plains is ready.
Correct. They're doing blasting and getting the construction site ready now, but it'll be 2027, I believe, before it's open.
Joe, we only have a few minutes left. You're sponsoring a bill that's caught a lot of interest, the NIL thing coming from a university town. Tell our viewers about your NIL bill and how you think it's good for the state and that sort of thing.
Sure. Well,
because that's a big thing on people's mind, because Alabamians love sports.
It is, and I tell you, I'm not a huge fan of where we are on NIL and the transfer portal and where it's taken the sports dynamic. Sports is a huge economic driver for our state. It drives companies that want to come here. It drives investment tourism. It drives enrollment applications for all our universities, and when we have high performance programs. And we do not have a lot of national standards that we can follow when it comes to NIL. They've got NCAA, and Congress has got to step up and make those recommendations and set some guidelines. Until we get to that point, it's going to continue to be the Wild West and just a competitive chess match to see who can get a leg up on the other. And it's my understanding that maybe Coach Saban made a recommendation to Kirby Smart's people in Georgia, if they would take the state income tax off NIL, then that would help with recruiting. So they filed a bill in Georgia that would have given them a competitive advantage for recruiting over Alabamians. And so we filed a bill to do the same, to call them out. Mm-hmm. And it's and I don't say I like that way of approaching it, but when it comes back to the competitive advantage, we got to have this conversation. How far do we want to go when it comes to get the best and brightest students that want to come, the student athletes that we want to have the best performing teams in this state? It's not a huge sum of money because we just think about the big $1 million players, but most of these NIL players are getting $30,000 or $40,000 a year, which is still substantial.
Is that what the average is now?
I don't know exactly where the average is, but there's a lot of them. It's usually enough just to pay tuition, room and board, because the expectations of their performance, they can't have a job, really. And so it's really just the offset in the image that as we're recruiting these athletes is there. Now, I've had some communication with Georgia legislature, and they didn't see it coming, us filing a bill. So all it would have done is they'd have been right back at the same spot. So our whole goal is to try to open this conversation and hopefully stop or hold up Georgia from doing it. So at least if they've stopped their bill, then we have accomplished the goal of keeping us on the same playing field. So when we get somebody we want to use the port out of Mobile and they're wanting to use Savannah's, we incentivize it. If we're trying to get a company to come to Huntsville but they're really wanting to go to Chattanooga, we incentivize it to come over here. That's the same thing. We've got to look at it. If we're looking at our sports teams this way, I don't like it, but it's the rules we got to play under. And anytime I will go to fight for Alabama in any category that we're trying to be successful in. And so we're having this conversation. It's we can all agree we may not like NIL, but if we're going to be under it, how far are we willing to go, and what do we want to do to put our teams in the best areas to perform? I mean, we had number 1 versus number 2 in basketball play last week, and that doesn't just happen. A lot of things go into making those teams to be at that level. And I tell you, I've had a lot of passion in either direction reach out to me. It's been a great conversation. I've been called some crazy names on the internet, but that's a lot of fun and part of the process. So, like I said, we're here to ask the hard questions, and if we're not asking some of these hard questions, we're not doing our job, in my opinion.
I'm glad you're doing that so we can not let Georgia get ahead of us. Well, Joe, I hate to say this, Representative Lovvorn, our time's up.
It's been a joy to visit with you.
Well, we'll do it again soon. Maybe get some more issues and everything. Sure. But I appreciate you taking time to be with us because I know you're in the middle of the session and chairing the Rules Committee. Folks, our guest tonight has been Representative Joe Lovvorn from Auburn, who chairs the House Rules Committee in his third 4-year term in the House. We thank him for taking time right in the middle of this session to be with us, and we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank y'all.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.